All right, so here we go. Hi guys. I am so glad you showed up today because it would really suck to talk to myself for, however long. Um, we are cruising along and the end is near, you guys. Like this is chapter 10. We only have 2 more lectures after this, and then like the semester's over, which is shocking to me. I don't know. Things are weird, but it seems like it moved fast. Maybe not, probably guys, not for you, but for me it does. So things that have happened, I have graded your first 4 discussion boards. Those grades are all up. I've had some people message me. I made a couple mistakes as far as not spotting somebody's discussion board response. And if you think there's any problems with your grades, just let me know. I'm happy to relook at them. But most of you guys, we've filtered it all out, so we're good. That leaves me with 2 more to grade. And you have 1 more test. I am going to start working on the test. My goal is our last lecture for chapter, I know we'll go 9, 10, and then some number, and then some number. Whatever that last lecture is, I'm hoping we'll spend the last 10 minutes kind of talking about the test. By then it should be made. It's on my to-do list. Does anybody have, first of all, is there like a weird, crazy feedback sound this week? How are we doing? Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. If you can't hear me or I'm buzzing, let me know. Secondly, oh, thank you. Whoa, that's so weird. The chat thing pops up now. This semester's been weird. I've had to learn technology. We're getting there. What was I going to say? I don't even freaking know what I was going to say. Oh, Alexis, you forgot to do a discussion board? Oops.
I read the syllabus wrong and thought that it was due for the next week, but it wasn't. And then I went in and there was a 0 in the grade book, and I was like, shoot. But it's no big deal. I'll be okay.
Well, at least you can laugh about it. I was to be like such a type A person. I'd cry. Claire, I can't hear me, but you guys can hear me, right? The rest of you, like, wave your hand. You can hear me. Okay. Okay. So Claire, maybe you should reboot. Okay. So we're gonna just get started today because that's how we're going. As soon as I find my little share box. Oh, you guys are outside. I'm so jealous. Okay. So share screen. I have 500 to share. Let's share this one. Okay. From current slide. There we go. Oh, I went too far. So today, guys, thank you for getting on the camera. I like looking at your faces. It's not as fun when I can't see you. So those brave enough to get on your webcams, thank you. It means a lot. Just to see who I'm talking to. And then you can wave at my head if something's wrong. We're going to talk about courtrooms today. And a lot of you think you know about courtrooms, but I can assure you that the TV is not telling you the truth if that's your basis for courtrooms. If you've been in a courtroom or gotten to observe court, that's great. That's definitely a step in the right direction. But if you think it's like I used to watch SVU, if you think it's like that, that's first of all, that's New York. New York's a different beast, but that's not typically what you would see when you go into court. So hopefully we can just dispel some of the stuff and then talk about other stuff that I think is important to a general understanding of what it's like to be in the courtroom. Usually I talk about this, the lawyers and then the judges, but today we're going to talk about the judges first because that's how it is. How do judges get to be on the bench? Well, is that a dog, Alexis, or a cow? It kind of looked like a cow, but I don't think cows run that fast. Sorry, distracted.
It's my dog.
Oh, it looked kind of like big like a cow. Okay. So how you get to be a judge is really different in different states. There are different methods. We're going to talk about each of those in a future slide. But just know that how you become a judge is different. But the one commonality is you have to be a lawyer first, and you have to have practice and be familiar with the law before you would ever go on to be a judge. So the first step is being a lawyer. And every state, like I said, does a little something different. We're going to talk about that. So how are judges pick to be on the court? Well, one way is to be commission based. They call this sometimes the merit appointment or the Missouri plan. What this means is they appoint like a commission or a group to sort of look at potential candidates, and then they interview them, and they get like their resumes and put them all together, and then they come up and vote with whoever they think should be a judge, and then that would go to someone usually higher up to sign off on. But that's like picking the best judge for the job. Okay, other states have partisan elections where their political party shows up on the ballot. So when you go to vote, if any of you guys have gone to vote, hopefully you have, under the different politicians' names, even judges, right? Sometimes there'll be a political party. They do not do that. They do that at the local level here. So if you're voting for like a judge for Lucas County, you will see signs that are, Democrat or Republican. Um, at like the Supreme Court level, at least for the state of Ohio, I can't speak to Michigan, or if you're from another state, I'm sorry, I don't know. But in the state of Ohio, they do not run with the political party, those running for like state Supreme Court. So you have to go basically do your research ahead of time and figure out who is best going to represent you. And when I was young 80 years ago, I used to think, what does it matter? A judge is a judge. I used to pick them based on what name looked, I'm Irish, what name looked most Irish, stupid young person, me, I was stupid. But now I think, well, these are the judges that decide cases locally. And if I'm ever in trouble, who is going to be best, for our county? Right now I have a 10-month-old, and my priorities have changed a little bit. So, judges that are tough on crime, or judges that are tough on people who drink and drive, that to me is a little more important. So I might do, my research a little bit more. So in some cases they are on the ballot with political party, in some cases they're not. Sometimes it's a gubernatorial appointment, which means the governor would choose a judge. And then sometimes it's a legislative appointment. So the state legislature would go in and for a state that used this method, and then they would be like, they'd take a vote on who they wanted, and then whoever got the most votes would go up and be the judicial person. Locally, some judges are elected, some judges are appointed. I mean, I'm speaking for Ohio, right? My husband's is from Cleveland, Ohio, and his aunt is a judge in Cleveland. And so I have been I have been around for many of her when she runs for election, and she drives around a little pink golf cart all the time, and tries to get people's votes. But she was asked to run, and that's how she got into being a judge. But she was a lawyer before that, so sometimes I ask her questions. I can't wait. She's known as one of the toughest judges in Cleveland, so I can't wait to go into a courtroom. She'd probably scare me. But if you ever get the chance, go into a courtroom, observe, see what's going on. I've been to many courts over time. Normally, if this wasn't COVID and you were in my intro class, we would be going to court. And actually doing a mock trial in the downstairs courtroom that's in the Health and Human Services building. This is not a normal year. I'm sorry. I feel like in a lot of ways you guys got screwed because, I didn't get to take you to prison. I didn't get to take you to jail. I didn't get to take you to the police department. I didn't get to go on all these fun field trips that I always offered to my students. But it is what it is. COVID. Blame them for everything. By the way, speaking of COVID, time out. And a lot of you guys are like under 18, but if you are 18 and older, and I don't know what the rules are for 16 to 18 here, go get your vaccine. I couldn't encourage you to get more vaccinated if I tried. I'm not pushing you, and I'm not saying you have to, but UT is offering free vaccines to people. Pretty much now you can go get a vaccine anywhere, at least down where I am. They're like dying for people. Walmart was announcing in Perrysburg that they had so many cancellations that if you were in the store walking around, you could come get a COVID. I think they had Pfizer, so it was 16 and up. So anyway, I had no problems with the vaccine. I had the Moderna and Pfizer, but anyway, it's available. UT is giving it. They're hoping to get some Johnson and Johnson ones so they can vaccinate more students. Students really tend to be problematic getting them to come back sometimes. So anyway, that's my little plug for COVID shots. But you don't have to listen to me. You're not forced to get one. But I'd love for things to get back to normal. Yes. So anyway, I digress. Sorry, guys. So some of the benefits to being a judge are there's a lot of life terms, especially if you're a federal judge. I mean, otherwise, if you're like a local judge, you run every, depends, 4 years, 6 years. I'm pretty sure my husband's aunt runs every 6 years. I think so, because I think she's done running. She just won and she'll be there for 6 years and then she's done. Um, but for federal judges, it's typically you're on there for life unless you decide to retire. There's a lot of respect and prestige. Judges sit at the front of the courtroom. They've got their, little robe on. They look all fancy. They wield a lot of power, and for some people, that's very attractive. And it's, you know, it doesn't always have to be corruptive. Some people just, feel like they've spent so much time in school and they've worked so hard. They've sort of, reached the pinnacle of their career. They make a lot of the decisions. They're the ones who sign off on all sort of plea deals and whatnot. So if there is a negotiation to be had, the judge can stop it flat in its tracks and say, I ain't accepting a plea deal. Like, you're going to go to court. I don't care. Or they can be like, yeah, you guys have worked this out. It seems, like a good idea. Oh, sorry. I just popped up the thing. Alexis, good answer. I know the field trips are the fun part. Sorry. And then, can judges rerun as many times as they want to? Yes. There's no term limits. So until they're voted out, they keep going. Um, and a lot of
Why
them have been judges for quite a long time.
why is it like that? Like, why does the president have, like, they can only run for 2 terms, but why can, like, judges run as many times as they want?
Well, okay, so let's just take a step back here, right? And make a little political class here for a second, right? The president is limited to 2 terms because it's the most powerful person. And you don't want someone to be the most powerful person for too long, because that just seems like a bad deal, right? But for judges, sometimes the experience is what makes them a great judge, and the more experience they have, the more they know how to run. There's no judge. Okay, let me back up. There's no judge school. Nobody teaches you how to be a judge. You've observed a judge from being a lawyer over time, but no, there's no class you take. You kind of have to like figure it out on your own. And judges don't sit up at the front and just make decisions all day. They have to schedule the dockets. They have to run the courtroom and all the personnel in there and oversee everybody. So a lot of times, their experience is a good thing. And people like the predictability of having a judge that they know, because they know almost always how they're going to rule. So like, for a judge that sees, let me take an example here. Like my husband's aunt. Everyone knows she's a tough ass. Like, she is the hardest, meanest, like, she doesn't take no crap. And she sentences everyone to hard punishments. And she's very unsympathetic. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's how she is. When you draw her name and you go in front of her in court, what you're going to get. She's going to be tough. She's not going to be sympathetic. And lawyers at least can feel confident when they go in that they can tell their client how to expect it to go. And that predictability is really comforting to a lot of people. However, if they screw up, there are ramifications, and I think we'll talk about those. They can be have their licenses revoked from the American Bar Association. They can be voted out of office. They can be removed from office. And so there are ways to sort of, if they're doing something wrong. But at the end of the day, people like predictability, and people like to know sort of what they're getting. And that's why they let judges stay in office for so long. The experience, you have to know so much of the law that, not everyone has that sort of handle. Most people specialize in different types of laws. and they don't have an expertise in sort of a little bit of everything. So judges do. It's just hard to find them. A lot of people, have families and lives, and they don't want to dedicate all their time to being a judge. And plus, no offense, like you sentence these people in the community, and then you run into them. That's gotta suck. I'm just saying, like, you're gonna go to jail for a year, and then they get out, and you bump into them at Walmart. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. So, Lexus, nod. Did I answer your question? Okay. Challenges, like I said, mastering the law. You have to know everything about all these laws. It's hard, especially for a court of limited jurisdiction or more general jurisdiction that we talked about earlier, that sort of sees a whole wide array of cases. I mean, if you're working in a particular kind of court, like a traffic court, all you see is traffic cases all day long. Like, you only have to know traffic laws, but otherwise you have to know laws about a little bit of everything: domestic violence and traffic and abuse and all the different crimes, the robbery and larceny and theft and the different degrees and what kind of punishments they have with them. I mean, that's a lot of things to know. I mean, I consider myself semi-smart, but like that hurts my head to even think about. Um, they're the ones who schedule what days they want to work, what days they're going to hear cases, for how long they're going to hear cases. They supervise all the staff. And by the staff, I mean people like the bailiff, the court reporter, anybody who's working in the courtroom. Um, there is, psychological discomfort, obviously, because people hate you. You're only making one side happy. You're usually not making both sides happy. So someone always hates you. And plus you have to do heartbreaking things. Like, I don't think any judge goes in there and goes, I want to tear apart families and break children's hearts, but we live in a system of laws where when you break the law, there are consequences. And so I think it's a tough job. Like I said, I wouldn't want it. Loneliness, because you have to be careful where you go, who you talk to, what you do, because people are either, it's like policing. They either ask you annoying law questions and you deal with that all day. You don't want to talk about it later. Or, they're mad at you because they know someone who you punished. And then obviously sentencing criminals, are you making the right choice? When you decide to give someone probation and not jail time, is that person going to go hurt someone while they're out and about? Are they going to behave? Are they going to listen? Are they going to commit more crime or maybe hurt someone else? And you have that sort of indirectly on your conscience, and that's got to be tough. It's got to be a good judge. Be a good judge. Um, Obviously, you should be impartial as much as you can be and have dignity. Everybody who comes into the courtroom cannot afford, a proper attire to look nice. Not everyone is well educated. Not everybody, um, you know, what you got to do is take a step back and at least be able to empathize with people, like, this sucks. It's a tough situation. And, or at least be able to see sort of all sides of the story. It doesn't mean you have to agree. And you're always going to be a bit prejudiced. Every single person on the face of the planet is prejudiced because we have experiences that have tainted us for better or for worse. They have to make people behave and be nice in the courtroom, which is, sometimes troubling, especially when you have somebody heinous. Can I make a recommendation here? So I was bored and I was watching documentaries on Netflix, and I watched the Athlete A, I think it's called, on the US gymnastics team and the doctor that was molesting all of the gymnasts. It's a tough subject, and luckily he was put away for a really, really long, until he's dead. He'll never get out. But the point of this is they had a whole courtroom full of all of these. There's like hundreds of these gymnasts that he had molested over time, that all got to give a personal statement. And that's tough. It's emotional. Everyone is, gone through a hardship, and the judge is trying to control the courtroom and make sure everyone gets to say their piece, but that it stays orderly. I mean, I was just thinking, wow, that's a tough job. They're the ones who, just have to make sure all the rules are followed. There is a model code of judicial conduct that basically, tells you how you should behave. And then, like I already talked about, judges can be punished by the American Bar Association. They can lose their license. They can be censured. They can have be removed from cases. So there's judges can't just go do what they want. They can't. Okay. I've never heard of this before. What I do is I take the PowerPoints the book gives me, and then I just like cut, paste, and edit and do what I want to do because I don't really like what they have to say. I've never heard of this black robe disease ever in my life. So take it or leave it. I never heard of it. I think sometimes judges get a little arrogant. I think sometimes they're a little nasty, and I think sometimes they're judges for too long. The book basically says the same thing. And it's hard for all the reasons we just put out, why being a judge is hard. But like I said, there's ways to deal with it. So okay, stop share. I gotta see if I can do something here. So I go start share. Where's the sharing? Okay. I want to watch a little video. Can you guys all see this video? Okay. Can you hear the video?
When kids are accused of breaking the law, their cases are handled in juvenile court. Juvenile courts are similar to criminal courts for adults, but they're for kids under the age of 18. If a young person is accused of breaking the law, juvenile court is where the case is handled. Going to a juvenile court is complicated. It looks like they're doing lots of noise and it has some upset words. But divided by agreement, yes. Classes from kindergarten through 12th grade are public court classes. So they're open to 12 judges. Whichever one is available. Whichever one works. Courtrooms can be big or small. They can be really fancy with high ceilings or very simple ones just with tables. What happens in courtrooms, it is similar everywhere. And as you'll learn in this video, it depends on what you need to do here. Usually a separate courtroom.
Okay, we can't hear it. You know what I'll do? Copy. Stop share. There you go. For your carousal later, you guys can check out the video. It's just a quick little picture of what the courtroom looks like. I want you guys to see it because I think it's important. A lot of people have never been in a courtroom, and when I'm talking about these people, where they sit, sort of the different players, then you can check that out. So you guys can hear me though now, right? Okay, good. So let's go back to sharing my screen. That ain't it. That's it, share. Okay, perfect. So we talked about judges. Now we're going to talk about the prosecutor. The prosecutor is known as the gatekeeper to the justice system. Why are they called the gatekeeper? Well, they are the ones who levy charges against people or don't levy charges or decide how many charges or how few charges to levy against someone, or whether to offer a plea deal or accept a plea deal. They are very, very powerful. Okay, there's nobody else that decides what to charge a person with and how many counts to charge them with. That's the prosecution's sole job, or it belongs solely to them, I should say. They represent the people, the plaintiffs, the victims. A victim can be a person, a victim can be a city, a victim can be a target, like a playground that's been vandalized. And, the police put together an investigation. They come up with who they're pretty sure did it, and then they hand it over to the prosecutor. And the prosecutor goes through the evidence and decides, yes, I think there's enough evidence to charge. And then they make the decision on what to charge. Or there's not enough evidence, they can hand it back to police to do some more work. But almost always, no matter how good of a job the police do, they still have to do further investigation. They have to investigate the law. They have to investigate the situation. They have to read through all the paperwork. So there's a lot of reading. Not always done by the prosecutor. He has paralegals and people who work for him that do a lot of that work, or her, him or her. Their job, this, if okay, you guys gotta, don't disappoint me here. I have very few pet peeves. One of them is people who confuse jail and prison because they're not the same thing. The other thing is I ask people, what's a prosecutor's job? What is their job? What do they do? And people always say win. And I just want to smack them because that's not their job. Their job is not to win. Okay. They might lose a whole bunch of cases, but their job is to get it right, to get to the truth, to make sure the right person is punished for the crime. And those prosecutors that have lost sight of that, that's a problem, because your job, you may lose. You may not have the right person at the end of the day, but your job is to bring about the case, show the case that you have, present all your evidence, and let either the judge or the jury make the decision on, is this person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? Did they do this crime? That's your job. Okay. You may not like the case. You may not feel good about the case, but if it happens and you're the prosecutor, you're given the evidence and that's what you have to work with, and you represent the people. And a lot of people just don't understand that your job is not to win. It's not to win, it's to get it right and to make sure people who break the law are punished. So prosecutors have immunity in our system, which is sort of unique to the United States. Defendants cannot sue prosecutors for damages. So let's say you're in a courtroom, right? And Natty, I'm going to use you as an example because I see your bright, shiny face. Let's say I am the prosecutor. I believe you've committed a crime. I bring a case against you. And, I bring up a lot of things in your past that do not make you look good. Okay. Things that you did not want to come out. I don't know what they would have been. I'm making this up. And at the end of the day, you're found innocent. You cannot come back and sue me, or there's nothing you can do. The things that come up in court, there's immunity for the prosecutor. Just throwing that out there. Can't sue them for, the case that they bring against you. Some people don't like that. Some people say it's not fair because sometimes prosecutors are overzealous and do too much. And, there has to be some way of punishing them, but they have immunity. That's just the overwhelming fact. There are different ways that prosecutors can have misconduct. I gave you some examples here. I know your book talks about some of them too. If they try to offer or speak about inadmissible evidence, sometimes before a trial begins, the judge will, tell the lawyers, you can't bring this up in court. And if a prosecutor does that anyway, that's called misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct. Then get in trouble for that. Suppressing evidence from the defense. We have this thing called discovery, which I think I've mentioned before. Discovery is when you have to give all your evidence over to the defense as a prosecutor so that they can see all the reports and evidence that you have. If you hide something from them that they're supposed to have, you can get in trouble for that. Encouraging deceit from witnesses. It's called perjury. If you knowingly put somebody on the, up front to testify, if you're positive that they're lying, that's perjury. A person cannot lie, and you cannot knowingly put a lying person up there or introduce evidence that isn't true when you know it isn't true. Introduction of false evidence falls under that too. So there's a lot of other ways, but that's just some ways that prosecutors can misbehave. You also have a defense attorney. Their job is not to get their client found innocent. I mean, that's not their job. Their job is to represent the accused and make sure their rights are protected and to introduce doubt. I mean, that's what they're trying to do, right? They don't have to prove as a defense attorney that someone did it or didn't do it. They just have to prove that it could have been someone else. But their job is there to make sure that their client's not railroaded, that all of the rights that you're given under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the amendments are all that they're all carried out for people, even despicable, gross, horrible people who do very, very heinous things, they still get their rights. And, you know, a lot of people, I couldn't defend bad people, but, you know, defense attorneys feel very, very, feel it's important to make sure rights are upheld. That's a very important part of our justice system. And so I'm glad that there's defense attorneys out there, because Lord knows you never know when you're going to need one. Also, too, defense counsel also provide indigent services. When you hear the word indigent, think poor. People who cannot, you know, we talked about Miranda warnings in our discussion board, but you know, part of that is if you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you, right? So if you cannot afford your own lawyer in this country, you will be provided one. Now, remember, I've talked about you're not provided a great one or the best one, but you are provided one. One that has passed the bar and can legally practice in your state. And that's a big part of their job. Now, in different states, it's done differently. In larger cities, they have public defenders. People, they hire 10, 15, 20, 30 public defenders that rotate cases. So as they get new cases come in for indigent people, they will assign those cases. Now, in smaller jurisdictions, it works differently. They don't have public defenders because there's not the need. They don't have the high caseload. So in a lot of those places, local lawyers have to represent indigent clients, and they're contracted by the city to represent them, and they have to do X amount a year. And there's some type of contract where, you know, we'll pay you $20,000 to represent 100 people this year, and that rotates through the different attorneys in the town getting assigned cases. So in some places, if that's how they're assigned, you could get a really great public defender. It's not a public defender. You can get a really great defense attorney because they're having to do X amount of indigent cases, where a public defender is sort of like the worst paid, most overworked, like starting off attorneys, and, you know, maybe are not the best. Obviously, because you don't have money. If you had money, you could buy someone better. Oh, okay. So, courtroom work group, and that's the video I wanted to show you. So please try to watch it if you can. It's very quick. It's very quick. You don't even have to watch the end. Just watch the part where the different players are in the courtroom. So there's 6 people that make up this word or this group, this courtroom work group. There, I can't speak English. You have the judge in there. You have the prosecutor. You have the defense attorney. You have the court report. I typed that, typoed. Court reporter. You have the clerk of courts. They do all the file paperwork, that sort of thing. And then the bailiff is the person who brings people in, takes them out, administers the oath, maintains a lot of the order in a class, in a courtroom. So, you know, when you have someone who goes crazy, I've seen a few defendants jump over tables and try to run. It's usually the bailiff's job, who's typically a sheriff's deputy, to jump on him and subdue him. This is like not a fun job. Because honestly, this is just me thinking out loud. Whenever you see people like go into courtrooms and shoot them up, it's always the bailiff who gets shot. Does not sound like a good job to me. But they have to work together every day. You see the same people every day, the same bailiff, you see the same court reporter, you see that, you know, each town only has X amount of defense attorneys and prosecutors. Some offices have 1 prosecutor, some offices have 20 prosecutors. It just depends on the size of your jurisdiction. But they have to work together, and you see these people every day. So they develop sort of a relationship. So I've heard people sort of talk about, you know, they go to a bar and they run into like the judge and the defense and the prosecution. They're all having lunch together. And that's, you know, that's not right. That's a breach of ethics. Well, I mean, they work together every day. You know, they can separate most of the time, you know, their work from, you know, their private life. And these people, you know, they're around all the time. So this is the fun part. I love this last part of the, sorry, I gotta get comfortable. I love the last part of the lecture because this to me is sort of a place where I get a lot of questions and students think are really interesting. So, you know, the question is, when you're a defense attorney, what defenses can you use? A defense is defined as, and I've typed it out here, the response by a defendant to a criminal charge. Why Did you do it or not do it? Or what's going on? It's how they get to defend themselves. Now, there's something called an affirmative defense. And this is where they go, I did do it, but there's a reason why I did it and I should be forgiven. There is such a thing. And we're going to talk about them. So moving on. Okay. So justification defenses. There, my chat box. The first one is I committed the crime to protect myself. Now, first of all, I want to make sure everyone knows self-defense does not always work. A lot of times it's offered, it doesn't work. Basically, you are allowed to protect yourself if you feel like imminent danger is happening. So, for example, in a domestic violence situation, since this is what I study, if your boyfriend, because girls are usually the victim, not trying to be typical, that's just how it works. If your boyfriend comes at you with a knife and you hit him over the head with a bottle and, I don't know, you hit him too hard and he dies. You could argue self-defense. Deadly force is being used towards you, and to protect yourself, this is what you did. That would be a little bit more successful than if someone, repeatedly rapes you, and then later when they pose no danger, you go and kill them. Usually it has to be something immediate and emergent. So an emergency and happening at that point for it to be self-defense. And it has to be equal. So if someone comes up to you, I'm trying to think what I have around me, and I have a pen, right? And I start, stabbing you in the leg. That's going to hurt, but you don't get to shoot me because I'm stabbing you with a pen. That's okay. But if I come at you with a knife or some kind of deadly weapon, a baseball bat, if you're an MMA fighter, your hands might be weapons. If I come with you, there's something that could kill you. Now, you could probably make the argument this pen might stab your eye and go through your brain. I have seen people killed with pens. It's not pretty. It's very messy. But maybe, but most of the time, you can only use deadly force against someone to protect yourself if they're using deadly force against you. So self-defense is something that you can say, yes, I did it, but you can use the defense of necessity. I had to do it. If I didn't commit the crime, something else bad would have happened to me or something else. So I've heard of, there was a case in Toledo, and this had to be when I first started here. So 2015, 2016, police officer was in a scuffle with some, I don't know what they had done with some criminal or potential perpetrator or offender, whatever. An old lady driving by saw it. She got out of her car and started beating the shit out of the perpetrator. Oh, I love Toledo. That's fantastic. I mean, it's like an 82-year-old woman. Fantastic, right? You're not allowed to go aggravated assault someone. However, it was necessary to save the officer who was having a trouble because this person was very large, 350 pounds, 6'4", 6'5". I mean, this little old lady went up and beat the shit out of him. I'm impressed. But anyway, if she was to be charged, she could argue, as necessary. There's laws that protect good Samaritans too, by the way, just FYI. And then there's duress. You had to do the crime, or somebody made you do it. So let's just say, here's an example, right? So you are a victim of a home invasion. Someone breaks into your house and you're there with your parents and your siblings, okay? And the person who broke in ties you all up and says, look, I'm going to kill your parents and your siblings if you don't go to the bank and withdraw all the money. Yep. So you go and you rob a bank or withdraw all your money, and you're not supposed to be doing that. And any crime that you committed while you were trying to save your family, or you were afraid for your life, would be considered you were under extreme stress, and you didn't have a choice. So that's 3 things to say, I did do it and I'm justifying it this way. Now the excuse defenses, we'll talk about them. So age, you cannot be held accountable for a crime if you are under the age of 7. So you are a kid and you find your parents' handgun and you go shoot your baby brother. If you are 6 years old and you kill your sibling, there's nothing that can happen to you. They can give you counseling, psychological help, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you're never going to go to jail or prison for that because you're not held liable for your actions under the age of 7.
I have a
Now,
question.
okay, what is it, Alexis?
Would the parents be held accountable for like child endangerment if their child got a hold of their handgun and then shot one of their children?
Possibly,
It just like all depends.
yeah. So this is what happens, right? A lot of times the pain inflicted is so bad that at the end of the day they don't bother to charge because you've already lost a kid or something. You know what I mean? But like if a kid shows up at school with their parents' handgun in their book bag, then you can bet that parents gonna get in trouble, right? So they'll go after them if they haven't been punished in some other way. But like when your kid gets a hold of your handgun and shoots your other kid, like you're already going through the worst loss of your life. Like they're probably not going to do anything to you. But if your kid does something, takes somebody else's life, does something horrible because you weren't supervising them or you allowed them access, then yes, you can get in trouble and you will get in trouble. Like I said, usually if you as a person have had loss, a major loss, then they won't go after you. Just because why, pile it on at that point, you're already devastated. Good question. Other states have different ages. So in the state of, okay, so when I lived in Georgia, everybody who, how they say 18 as an adult and 17 and under is juvenile? Well, in the state of Georgia, at 17, you're considered an adult. So no matter what you do at age 17, you are going to adult court and being handled like an adult. And then obviously if you do something heinous enough, they can bump you up if you're younger, but that's how they see you. All crime 17 and older is an adult, where other states it's 14 and up, and in some states it's 17 under as a kid and 18 up as adult. They Each state does it a little differently, and most of the time you know age does play a role in punishment. I was just reading online, and this is just a current observation, right? I was reading online that 2 girls hijacked a Uber driver's car and killed the Uber driver. I don't know if anybody read this. I don't even know where I saw this at. And they took a plea deal, right, to not go to prison and be sentenced as adults. And in fact, I don't know how old they are, 15, 16, I don't know how old they are, that they will get out when they're 21 from a juvenile facility. And I'm like, I wish I knew how old they had been, because this is sort of interesting, right? If you're 15, 16, the question becomes, do you know what you're doing? Should you be held liable for that? Do you know that you shouldn't hijack a car and get someone killed? Do you understand the ramifications of your actions? And that's different. They ask often too, does a 7-year-old, well, they might understand yes and no, if you have good parents that are teaching you yes and no, which is not always the case. But do they understand that when something bad happens, it's permanent? Let me give you an example. There was a case in Arizona, and this was a while ago. I know I've been using this example for a while, so it had to be like 10 years ago. There was this dad who was downstairs talking to his buddy in the living room, and his daughter comes down from her nap and goes, she's 5 or 6, and goes, "Daddy, can I have some ice cream?" He goes, "No, I don't think so." She comes back down a little bit later and she goes, "I really like some ice cream." He goes, "No, you're not having ice cream. Go back upstairs." So a little bit later, she grabs his gun, comes downstairs and shoots him in the head and kills him because he didn't get her ice cream. Now you go, most 6-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds would know you don't kill someone. Did they really? I mean, they know yes and no, but did they realize that when they pulled that trigger that the dad wasn't ever going to come back? Like that was permanent? And that's where it comes into play. Like, at what age do you know things? And it's not the same for every person. I want to go down and jump to um It's not even on here. Well, anyway, one of the excuse defenses is actually mental age and IQ. And, there are a lot of kids that operate at a much lower age than what they are physically. So you might be a 10-year-old physically, but your brain is operating at a 4-year-old level. And so they'll interview people and talk about, talk to teachers and people who go to school to see sort of, where you are developmentally, because everybody is a little different. Entrapment, police cannot entrap you. What does entrapment mean? I'll give you an example. I like examples. So you are a drug dealer and you're selling some marijuana, and police officer knows you're a dealer and he goes undercover and he tries to buy some marijuana from you. He goes, yo, dude, you got any marijuana? And the guy's like, no. And then he's like, come on, guy. And he goes, no. And this police officer undercover keeps harassing him and harassing him and harassing him. And the dealer, who has no intention to sell to him, is so inundated by like this begging and pleading and constant that he just says fine and sells the officer the marijuana, and then he's arrested. At his defense, he can say, look, I didn't go up to the officer and offer drugs. I was not sitting there dealing drugs. They entrapped me into doing something I was not already going to do, and get your case thrown out. So entrapment, being forced into committing a crime that you weren't going to actively commit. Now, if you're operating a drug house where they watch people coming in and out buying drugs, and they come in and buy drugs from you, they're seeing that this is a repeated behavior. You are selling everybody drugs. So that's not entrapment. But if they come up to you while you're not actively selling drugs or trying to sell drugs, they harass you into doing it, then that's called entrapment. Intoxication is a really interesting one that doesn't work very often, once in a while. So if you commit a crime after you drink a bunch, that's not an excuse. However, if you are, and this happened to my freshman year roommate, go to a frat party, they make a little hairy buffalo, it's got Everclear in it. If anybody knows Everclear, can't really taste it. Very, very powerful, especially the high proof stuff. And, I found her a half hour later on a couch about to get raped. Now, it's a tragic story. However, let's just like flip it on its head, right? So let's say she had drank all this booze and she did something bad. She found a bat, swung it, and hurt somebody, and aggravated assaulted someone. She didn't mean to get drunk. She wasn't trying to drink. She was just told it was like fruit juice, and she drank it not knowing. Then she might be able to use intoxication as an excuse, but you would have to be able to prove that you did not intend to drink the alcohol. Intoxication can also work for drugs too. When females are roofied, males can be roofied too, or some type of sedative is put in your drink or snuck to you. If you do anything, you could argue you didn't mean to do it, you didn't know you were doing it, you were under the influence. Double jeopardy, you cannot be accused of the same crime twice. So if you have killed someone, they take you to court, you're found not guilty, they cannot take you to court for the same thing ever again. And if they do try, you can claim double jeopardy. And then mentally ill, insane, it works very rarely. This works very rarely. The person was so mentally ill, they did not know right from wrong. It's really hard to prove too, because even mentally ill people, and I used to be a therapist, so I worked with a large number of mentally ill people at all different levels. Let me tell you, they may think that there's red cowboys, in the next room, and that mushrooms are talking to them. Yes, I had a client who thought that. But they still know right from wrong. So you have to prove that they do not understand right from wrong. And that's really hard to do, because even the most mentally ill people often know. Now, I'll give you an example. My criminology professor at Miami, when I was a criminal justice minor, she had a bunch of rental buildings down in Hamilton, Ohio, like houses that she rented to tenants, and she was going around. I don't really know why she was at this tenant's house. Well, the tenant was schizophrenic, and had other disorders and had decided not to take their medicine. So when my professor walked up to the house, they thought she was an alien out to kill her, and they shot and killed her. Okay, that person went to court and was found not guilty by reason of mental illness and defect, meaning that if the person had been medicated and had been taking care of themselves, they they would never have done this. They did not know what they were doing. They were so whacked out. Now, there are arguments, I have them, where, it's up to your caretaker to make sure you're taking your drugs, or, for you to be put in some type of institution if it's that bad. But there are sometimes people just, they break from reality, and you can use that, but it's very hard to prove. Those are fun. So does anybody have any questions about those at all? Anybody have any questions about the different excuses or the justifications? Does anybody have any questions about the people in the courtroom? Does anybody have anything at all that they would like to ask me while I'm sitting here in front of you? And okay, Cameron. So mentally ill people that do break from reality, that do irrational things, why aren't they charged or defined to anything? Defined to anything. What does that mean? Clarify, please. Break from reality, that do irrational things, why aren't they charged? Sometimes they're not charged because they take out defined to anything. Okay. So here's the deal, right? So the criminal justice system has typically in the past taken that position that it would be better to get these people mental help and turn them back into productive members of society than to lock them up, because we're just paying for them to sit there on drugs doing nothing if they can be shown to be productive members of society when they are on drugs. And honestly, mental illness is, this is something I feel strongly about. People do a lot of horrific things, and most of the time, yeah, they're to be blamed and held accountable, but there are some things that people do that there would be no, if they were not mentally ill, they would not have done them. And I want to give you an example of something that I'm personally passionate about, but you don't have to agree with me. That's not my point. My point is Andrea Yates. A lot of you probably don't know who she was. She was a mother in Texas who drowned her 5 kids because she thought the devil was residing in them. This is a loving person who has a history of severe mental illness. Okay. Her husband chooses to not get her therapy and to let her go off her drugs. He puts her in very stressful situations, like, she's already got issues. They keep having kids. And, they living in a teeny tiny school bus with her 5 kids that she's taking care of all day, and she loses it. Go figure. And she drowns her 5 kids. And the world wants to punish Andrea Yates because that's the most horrific thing you can do. As a mom, I never understood until I became a mom, but it's the worst thing, like killing your kids, like babies, hurting babies. You guys have heard me say I don't like hurting babies. But no mother who was sane would drown her 5 babies, especially when this person has a history of mental illness and issues and problems. And the doctor told her husband to stop having babies, and he didn't listen. Like, this was too much for her. And so I hold the doctor responsible. I hold the husband responsible. Do I hold her responsible? Not really. I don't. And what she did is horrific. Those 5 babies are dead because of her. But ultimately, where she belongs is getting help. I don't think she belongs to be locked up the rest of her life. She needs to be medicated and treated, and to somehow, pay for her sins in a different way. That's my humble opinion. There are other people who are not good people. I mean, Susan Smith, you probably don't remember her either. She had a boyfriend who didn't want kids. And so she put her 2 kids into the back of the car and drove it into a lake. She jumped out and the 2 kids drowned. They were buckled in their car seats and they were unable to get out. The reason she drowned her kids is she was not mentally ill. Okay. I mean, she may have been stressed or had anxiety. I don't know, but her new boyfriend didn't want kids and she really liked her new boyfriend. That's someone we can punish. So mental illness is something that we see more in criminal justice system as medicine becomes more expensive and harder to get, and people don't want to take it. And, family members get burned out and they don't want to oversee their family seeing their medicine. And, people, I don't think people would choose to be mentally ill. It's no way to live your life. If you ever go, when I used to go on jail tours, we go through the psych unit in the Toledo jail, right? Where, there's people in there who would smear their poop all over the wall. And would, every time I had a tour, they'd put poop all over so it would stink. They'd pee on their bed and pillows, right? And then they'd walk around naked screaming because they knew my students would have to look in and see all that crap. And they wanted, they were just, who does that crap? Most criminals would not do that. There are people who need a lot of help, but we're in a weird position. So you have to prove that they didn't know right from wrong, and that they were truly mentally ill, which is hard. So Cameron, that's like a super long answer. I don't even know if I answered your question. There are people who lose it. And it's just trying to figure out if they really genuinely did that or, not. But the really horrific stuff, I don't know, like killing your 5 kids. That's going to be punishment for the rest of her life. She drowned her 5 kids. Imagine living with that every day. Whew. Anyway, tough subject. You can disagree with me. I'm okay if you want her to fry. But mental illness it's the one thing that police officers deal with day in and day out and are unprepared for. The amount of mentally ill people out there, especially as we move into a society where, we're moving towards instant gratification and how many likes did I get on a post, and, how many people Snapchatted me today. And, when we don't get that, and being more depressed and, people, I don't know, society has changed quite a bit. And I think it's interesting. But I also think we're more accepting of mental illness in our society. Sorry, that's like way long, but anyway, anybody have any other questions, concerns, comments? So don't go drinking and think that you're going to get excused. That's not how that works. But these are options if you do find yourself in a situation. By the way, time out. Casey Anthony, you guys remember Casey Anthony, right? She actually had an affirmative defense, by the way. I don't know if you guys remember. She said, yes, I did kill my daughter, but it was an accident. She drowned in the pool and I panicked. I was afraid I was going to get in trouble. And so I buried her in the woods. So in her case, she admitted that Kaylee had died and that she hid it. But because she was stressed out and afraid and she was young and immature and didn't know better, she walked. I had problems with that, but I won't go into that. Any other questions, concerns, comments, anything at all for today? Yay. So I guess these lectures have become too long to upload. So I'm just going to keep doing them on YouTube and then posting them to the thing if you need to refer back to them. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoy this beautiful day. Go get yourself some fresh air, and I will see you next Tuesday, okay? But I'm here if you have questions. But otherwise, take care. See you later.